Alrighty, we're going to talk about the probability of a compound event and how you calculate it. Let's review what we've already learned. There are 6 possible outcomes when we roll a die one time. The outcomes can be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. There is a 1 out of 6 probability of rolling one of those numbers if you just roll the dice one time. Now what about when we flip a coin? Well, when we flip a coin, the probability of it landing heads up is 1/2 or 50% because there are only 2 possible outcomes. It's either heads or tails, but not both. The probability of an event occurring is found by the number of favorable outcomes over the number of possible outcomes. You will see probability expressed in 3 different ways. As a fraction, which is also a ratio, so you might see it as like 1/2 or 1:2, as a decimal, or as a percent. So in the case of our die, one roll of a die, each number has the probability of 1/6, 1, 6, 1 to 6, that's the ratio format. This means approximately 0.167 in decimal format, or approximately 16 2/3%. Now in the case of flipping our coin, getting a heads or a tails has a probability of 1/2, 1 to 2, 0.50, or 50%. Now using what you know, how do you think you'd calculate the probability of more than one event occurring, such as a roll of a die landing on 5 and flipping a coin landing tails up? We call this a compound event, where each event occurs independent of the other. So we're looking at rolling a die and having it land on 5, and then flipping a coin and having it land tails up. How do you think you calculate that probability? Well, to answer this problem, first we look at the probability of each event occurring. This is referred to as the sample space for each event. So we know that for rolling a die one time, to have the number 5 come up is a 1 out of 6 probability. We know that for the event of flipping a coin and having it land tails up or heads up is 1 out of 2, 1/2. So what do we do now? Well, the next thing we do is we multiply the probabilities of each event occurring. So 1/6 for the die and 1/2 for the flipping of a coin. That is 1/6 times 1/2, which is 1/12. The probability of this compound event occurring is 1 out of 12, or approximately an 8% chance. 8% probability. Let's try this one. What is the probability of randomly choosing a red marble and rolling a 4 with this die? So you see the little group of marbles there. There is a 2 out of 8 probability of choosing a red marble from this group or sample space. There are 8 marbles and 2 of them are red. There is a 1 out of 6 probability of rolling this die and having it land on 4. So we multiply the 2 probabilities together. 2/8 times 1/6 equals 2/48, and we reduce that to 1 over 24, which is approximately 4%. You can reduce this fraction here, the 2/8, before you do the multiplication. It doesn't make any difference whether you do it here or here. Okay, so let's summarize what we've learned. The set of all possible outcomes for one or more events is called the sample space. An event made up of two or more simple events is called a compound event. We calculate probability of a compound event by multiplying the probabilities of each event. Could we have more than two events? Absolutely. And how would you calculate the probability of three events occurring? Well, you would multiply each one of the probabilities for the sample space for each one together, and that would be your probability for that compound event. Okay, well that ends this very brief introductory video to probability and compound events. Enjoy the activity.